Well, we are back in the driveway, but not for very long at all. We've got 3 short days before we head out to Overland Expo West, and before that happens, there is a lot that I want to get done. Starting with a deep clean of the Troopy. After 9 months of being on the road, it could really use just a full clean out and reset. I also want to do fluids, a full oil change. I've got a transmission and a transfer case leak that is going to be a bigger project, but for now we're just going to drain and refill. Well, given that it's almost 90 degrees out here in the Central Valley, the awning is up to provide a little bit of relief from the sun. And after a trip to AutoZone and O'Reilly's, we got almost what we need to do all of the fluids. We got our M1301A oil filter. I'm going with 10W30 motor oil here. There's a lot of differing opinions on the best motor oil for the 3F, and people run weights that are just all over the place. I've seen 1030, I've seen 1540. In the old motor, the previous owner was running 2050, and that's what I was running. I think because this one is freshly rebuilt, remanufactured, running 1030 is a good call for me. I got some 8890 gear oil for my diffs. That'll be my front and rear diff. Nowhere in town had enough GL4 gear oil for my transmission and transfer case. The transmission has brass synchros in it, and so GL5 can corrode them. So you've got to stick with GL4. Royal Purple specifically calls out that it's non-corrosive to the soft yellow metals. But I could only find 2 quarts of it in town, so that is not enough to do a drain and fill, but it's enough to figure out what fluid level I'm at and top it off. I'm really going to have to figure out what to do about the leaks there. I'll get under here and show you guys, but it is not a good situation. I also picked up a quart of Dextron 2 ATF, which is what the power steering system calls for, which is another place where I'm really going to have to come up with a plan. Both the power steering pump and gearbox are just spewing out oil. I don't know if a rebuild kit is going to be enough for a gearbox and a pump that has 500,000 kilometers on it, but I'm pretty sure those are parts that are no longer available. I might end up pulling the gearbox and sending it out to be rebuilt, trying to find a donor core to rebuild. I gotta do something though. Before we get to the fluids, we're gonna do a full clean out of the Troopy. I wanna get it open, I wanna get everything out, and get a sense for where I'm at. So, let's do that. So here's my transmission and transfer case. You can see just how leaky those are. I've got oil dripping from there, but everything is wet under here. I've got oil dripping from there. It's not a ton, but it is enough to cause concern. So up here at the steering gearbox, you can see just how wet it is. At some point I should just do this entire steering linkage. The boot is totally wore out. I'm clearly leaking a lot of gear fluid from somewhere. I'm gonna have to figure that out. We got the shop supervisor. What do you think, bud? Huh? Are you excited to get the Troopy ready? Get back on the road, bud. Well, it almost feels like the build is back to where I intended it to be just by getting all of the winter gear and other crap out of here. There's room to walk around again. Here's everything that came out of it. My extra blankets and winter coats. The spare parts I've been carrying. That extra leaf spring, engine gasket set, my AC condenser and some of the plumbing for it, extra shackle off the front end. And I'm embarrassed to admit that I got nearly a full bag of trash out of here too. Just empty bottles from some of the projects, like hooking up the diesel heater. I just had extra fuel line, extra wiring, stuff that I had cut and then said, I'll throw the 6 inches that are left back in the truck. And then you get to a clean out point like this and you're asking yourself, why the heck did I save 6 inches of 10 gauge wire? I'm never going to use that. So it feels really good to be doing a full reset like this. I'm going to do a little bit more cleanup work, and then we'll be on to some actual vehicle maintenance here. All right, well, with the clean out behind us and the truck in good shape on the interior, now it's time to start the real maintenance. We're going to do the oil change first. It's been about 3,500 miles since my last oil change, just over 5,000 Ks from Toke, where we did the post break-in miles oil change, to here in California. And these things, the 3Fs, they're tractor engines. The best oil for them is the newest oil you have versus used oil. We're using 1030 today, and it's probably a little bit early for an oil change at 3,500 miles, but I know this weekend heading to Overland Expo and putting miles on it with some trips coming up, better to get it out of the way than to go too long. So let's get that done. Now, this may be kind of controversial, but I'm not really a brand loyalist when it comes to motor oil. I know some people really stick by their tried and true brands, but I sort of just buy whatever's on sale. I am a fan, though, of the Mobil 1 M1301A oil filters for these engines. The Toyota ones are great. They're just kind of hard to get. So it's a good cheap replacement that I can pick up at AutoZone. Well, in classic Ben fashion, this is a PSA to make sure you've got the tools you need for a job before you start the job. I just went to the back of the Troopy to grab my oil filter wrench, and apparently that's one of the things that went missing up in Whitehorse. So we're going to skip the oil filter this time. Not ideal, but again, I'm doing this oil change early. I think the oil filter will be fine. I'll do the next one early too, maybe around 6,000 miles. And give it another 3,000 and then I'll do it again, and I'll make sure I have the oil filter wrench that time, because at least now I've got the oil filter. But for the time being, let's go ahead and fill this puppy back up with oil, and then we can move on to our next task. Yes, you are a very good boy, aren't you? Yeah. You big tired dog, huh? You big tired dog? Oh, good. Oh, my goodness. Yes, you big silly boy, huh? Cool, big stretch. Alright, well, we managed to finish the oil change without making a huge mess, which is always a win in my book. Now it's time to look at the transmission and the transfer case. I wasn't able to find enough gear oil to do a drain and fill, but because I've got that slow leak there, I just want to open them up and make sure they're full, because the last thing I want to do is burn up my transmission on the way to Flagstaff for Overland Expo. I've also got to figure out what I'm going to do with that leak. I was looking online last night. There's rebuild kits with seals and bearings and things. But I also see some posts on the forum that say that a rebuild kit didn't solve their issue, because at 32 years old, over 500,000 kilometers on it, there's probably going to be some worn in grooves and indentations from the current seals. So that makes me think we might have to go deeper than a rebuild kit with new seals. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't have time to pull the transmission and transfer case and dig into it now, because we're leaving in just a couple of days. So the best I can do is make sure they're topped up with oil. Well, that seems full. Same setup on the transmission. We've got our drain plug down at the bottom and our fill plug up here at the top. And again, full is dribbling out of that fill plug. So let's see what that looks like. Well, it's right up there. You can feel it just as you stick your finger in. I suppose I'll try to pump just a little bit more fluid up in there just to be sure. Well, that took maybe a quarter of a quart before it really started dribbling out of there. So it wasn't super low. It's definitely a slow leak, but we still got to figure something out with that. Well, now last on our list is power steering fluid. This is another place where I've got some serious leaks that I'm going to need to resolve. But until I'm able to do that, which is going to be a pretty monumental effort, I think, collecting parts and pulling the pump and the gear and figuring out where the leaks are. Until we can do all of that, we're just going to keep topping it off. This calls for a Dextron 2 ATF fluid, and it's kind of hard to find. I think everything's gone on to Dextron 4, Dextron 5, but we got some at O'Reilly's, and let's fill it up. The cap has its own fill indicator on here, so there's a hot side and a cold side. We'll check the cold side. That brought us just a little bit over the bottom line, so I'm going to add a bit more. Yeah, it looks really good. Now we're right at the halfway mark. Right in the zone. Well, now just like that, we got a little bit of maintenance done, a little bit of spring cleaning done, and we are ready to hit the road for Overland Expo West in Flagstaff, Arizona. In addition to doing the expo, I'm hoping to spend a couple extra days camping and hitting some trails up in northern Arizona. Being from that part of the world, it holds a special place in my heart, and so I'm excited to get back to it with the Troopy. I think what's obvious here is that an oil change and topping off some fluids barely scratches the surface in terms of maintenance items on the Troopy. It's a 32-year-old truck, and there's a lot of prep work before we even think about going further south and making it to the tip of South America. Topping off the fluid when you've got a leaky part is just a band-aid. You're not getting anywhere close to the root of the problem, and in my mind it's good enough to do a couple 100 miles, spend a couple days in northern Arizona, but it's nowhere near good enough to think about going further. The thing with projects like a transmission or transfer case rebuild or power steering pump rebuild is that there's just a lot of research, a lot of parts collecting, and a lot of planning involved to make sure that when I start the project, I can finish it expeditiously and get back on the road as soon as possible. And I want to make sure that I do it right. And in terms of maintenance items, it's not just these leaky components. There is just a lot that needs some TLC before I really feel like the truck is in tip-top shape. Tie rod ends, my whole drive line, the Zerks on all the U-joints and slip yokes are completely shot. They're just gunked up, and so those probably all need to be replaced. Probably the U-joints need to be replaced themselves. So there's a lot more to come on the maintenance front here, and a lot of big projects that we're going to tackle together. I'm going to bring you along for every step of the way. If you like what I'm doing, it is a huge help to give these videos a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of me and the Troopy on the road, maybe consider subscribing and sticking around for a while, because there is a lot of good stuff to come. If you want to further support and help keep the Troopy on the road, you can maybe consider joining the channel as a member. Obviously, there's no obligation there, but the support goes a long way. I'm just happy to have you here. I'm thankful to be back in the Troopy and back to doing what I love and getting to share it with you. So I appreciate you. Until next time, get out and explore somewhere.